Chapter 16. There was a time when I went off into the Seri Indian reservation with a Mayan believer. The Seris were very primitive and reported to be hostile, but since the reservation was a goal of the 9-year plan, the attempt had to be made. My Mayan companion and I met in Mexico City, visited and taught all the way north. As usual, our sole provisions for our journey were faith and reliance upon God, and the very firm conviction that God always keeps His promise. The last stop at the end of the road was Kino, with no contact with Western civilization from here on. As we asked directions, in walked 2 Indians, both with long hair, very different from the Mexican Indians we were used to. One had a red ribbon around his head, only one trouser leg, and a piece of cloth for the other leg, a pair of dark glasses, well, almost. One lens was completely gone and the other was only a piece of jagged glass, and a smile that was a wonder to behold. One could feel the wildness of him, like a deer or fawn that is curious but ready to take flight on the instant. I asked one of them if he would care to guide us into Desemboque, the main Seri village, but he couldn't, as he had come by boat. He did invite me, however, to visit him in his home in Santa Rosa. We could have used a guide because there is no road, and the village lies about 90 kilometers back in the bush. But with hearts full of the love of God and prayers streaming from our lips, we started out anyway, with God as our guide. I just followed tire tracks through the sand, and every time we came to one going one way or some going the other, we said, Ya Baha'u'llah Pa, and took the wrong route. Talk about being guided. For 12 to 14 hours, we gave pamphlets in every ranchero between Kino and Punta Quecho. Not once did we follow the right track. Late in the evening, we arrived in Santa Rosa, but to our surprise, there was no village, not even a house, only a desolate beach. Just then we heard our first jeep of the day and rushed off to intercept it. My first question to the driver was, "Where is Santa Rosa?" He replied, "You just came out of Santa Rosa." "But," I cried, "nobody lives there." "Who said anybody lives there?" "How far to Desemboque?" I changed the subject. 72 kilometers, he replied. "Oh dear," I said, "I guess it's back to Kino because both of my gas tanks are almost empty." "That's not necessary," he explained. "You just turn left up ahead and go to the beach. The place is called Punta Quecho. I buy fish from the Seris, and you tell my boy to sell you some gas for the Kino price. Now I ask you, are all his servants or not, and do all abide by his bidding?" I thanked this man, and thus stopped at Punta Chueco, and who should be waiting for us but my wild man of the morning. First, my Mayan friend, Celestino, began giving the message to several Seris, who came around while I gassed up. Then the wild man arrived, saying, "Come with me." So I followed him down the beach and ended up several miles away where there was another large group of Seris, whom I told about the coming of Baha'u'llah. We slept on the beach, and at the first glimmer of dawn I was awakened by Jose, my new Seri friend, who was very busy examining my mattress. He said, "I am going with you to Desemboque." So off we went, bouncing down the beach. Next, a very strange thing happened. I began to talk about Baha'u'llah, then Celestino would talk, and for 72 kilometers we talked and talked and talked. But the odd thing was that Jose never once asked a question or made a comment. His sole contribution was, "Turn here, turn there, go straight." Celestino and I covered everything in the Baha'i writings, I'm sure, from Sheikh Ahmad-i Ahasi to Shoghi Effendi, including the divine plan and the administration, yet our Seri never uttered a word of conversation. Upon our arrival in Desemboque, the natives swarmed around the truck, began to rock it, and apparently intended to tip it over. Our Jose disappeared, and Celestino and I jumped out as we assumed it would be easier to pick ourselves up than to right the truck. As we jumped out, the Indians all gathered around, and the attitude was hostile. My first words were, "We have come to tell you about God." Once more, as if one turned off the water, the hostility completely vanished, and a chorus went up, "Oh, please, let us talk about God." We ended up with 16 invitations to return to teach them more about Baha'u'llah, and we gave out literature. With these invitations, we were in, as now we had friends and places to return to, and so the Seris were open to the faith of God. As we returned to Kino, our hearts were happy, but as we had finally run down, we said nothing. Jose, his usual self, said only, "Turn here, turn there, straight ahead." As we neared Punto Chueco, his home, I thought, my friend Jose must not be very bright. I only thought this, and said nothing aloud. Jose then spoke, saying, "That is right, I am not the smartest Seri Indian. There are a lot of Indians more intelligent than I am, but let me tell you something. I know what no other Seri knows, and that is that what you said about Baha'u'llah is true, and I know he's really God's messenger. No other Seri knows that." I stopped the truck, my heart in my throat, my soul in consternation. Could this apparently simple boy read my mind? What's more, here was our first Seri declaration. Astonishment is added to astonishment. I asked him if he truly believed in Baha'u'llah as God's new messenger, and if he wanted to be a Baha'i. He assured us with enthusiasm that he did. However, he said, "I have one very important question." "Please ask all the questions you like." "Well, I just love to drink. When I'm drunk, I'm happy. I would rather get drunk than anything else in this world. What do we Baha'is believe about drinking?" He was holding the registration card in his hand at the time. I reached over, took the card, and replied, "God loves you very, very much, more than any mother loves her children. He looks down upon us, his children, with this tender love that man cannot even understand, and he sees us getting drunk. He knew, even before science found out, that alcohol destroys the mind, the liver, and general health, that it is bad for us. He also sees us wasting money, that our wives and children need for food and clothing. He sees us get drunk and fight with our friends and neighbors, making enemies of those whom we should love. He sees this, and as a tender, loving father guiding his child, he says, 'O my son, whom I love so very much, for your real health and happiness, please don't drink because it will destroy you.'" Jose sat for some minutes in meditation. Then with a very warm smile he said, "That's good, very good," and reclaimed his card. I asked Celestino to read a prayer, whereupon our new Baha'i brother snatched the prayer book out of the Mayan's hand and proceeded to read most beautifully a prayer of Baha'u'llah. This was my confirmation that I alone qualify as the ignorant savage, for once again I had learned my lessons from our so-called primitive brothers.